Hey, what's up, everybody? So this question is, if you were a House representative, what would you be doing now, and what would you have been doing for the last 3 months to serve your constituents? So that's a good question. Um, for me, I have an interesting answer because I have an interesting perspective on what's going on right now when we look at COVID 19. So, in late January and early February, I was visiting a friend in China. So, this was when the coronavirus was starting to really take shape and impact the entire country of China. So, I was in Shanghai with my buddy, and we were observing the Chinese media as well as the global media, and in response, we left, and we flew to Hong Kong a couple days before mainland China shut down. So it was an interesting experience because we kind of saw everything that was happening at the earliest stage. And what was super trippy was when we were trying to come back home, there was a decision made by, you know, very high ranking officials within the United States government to dictate what American airports we could fly back to. So when I was in Hong Kong, my flight from Hong Kong back to Minnesota was canceled, and nobody let me know. So the previous flight cancellations were, delivered, with a level of customer service letting us know that, hey, just to let you know, your flight was canceled. So we showed up at the Hong Kong airport and were given a list of 7 U.S. airports to fly back to, and Minnesota, like Minneapolis, was not one of them. So I flew from Hong Kong to Seoul, South Korea, and from South Korea to New York, and then I had to catch a flight from New York to Minneapolis the following morning. So I think the biggest thing that really stood out to me and still stands out to me in response to the question is when I got back to New York, there were not any sort of tests. There wasn't any sort of quarantine. There wasn't anybody at the airport looking at my passport, trying to figure out where I've been the last couple weeks. So, I was in China and Asia for 2 weeks, and then, when I came home to one of the 7 airports that were on this list, I was kind of shocked because why would a high level government official, potentially the president or the vice president or whoever, make a decision to kind of funnel international travels back to certain cities if there aren't any tests that are waiting them to figure out whether or not they have the coronavirus. So if I was, your elected representative, I would have been a lot more responsive to trying to figure out, hey, how do we react to what's going on in China and the rest of the world, and what can we do to prepare for international travelers coming to or back to the United States. And I think the reason more people will die compared to if we would have been better prepared is because nobody did anything. And people had the information. Like, our highest level of elected officials in this country had information in November, December, January about the coronavirus. And chose not to do anything about it. So if I was the representative in my district, I would have put forward some sort of group to assess what was happening and what we could do to prevent spread. Obviously, months before our government did anything to, introduce social distancing and, basically shut down professional sports, bars, restaurants, any sort of resemblance of, normal activities in America. Um, so that's what I would have been doing for the last, 3 months since I've been back. Um, what I'd be focused on now, or even rewind a month ago from now, I think it's laughable with this band-aid that our government representatives are trying to place on this like bullet hole that is the economic ramifications of COVID-19, because a cash infusion of $1,200 one time into American bank accounts, that doesn't do anything. Like, that won't cover rent in most metropolitan cities. That won't cover a mortgage payment. So, if I were an elected official, any sort of bill passing through Congress right now that doesn't start with a T, like if it's not $1 trillion or $5 trillion or something that begins, with T for trillion, it doesn't matter. Like, it's not enough. And I don't know what the number is. I think a cash infusion of $10,000 into, the bank accounts of Americans would be a starting point. And what that total number looks like, you're probably getting into, $10 trillion. But unfortunately, I think that's the reality that we find ourselves in. I think, with half of America out of work right now, if you're an elected official, if you do the numbers, you have to come to the conclusion that half of the people in your district are unemployed. So what do you do? And I think this is the difference between somebody like me, who comes from a modest background. I don't come from money. I don't come from privilege. I, am a young worker, and I identify with other young people in this country versus, the person who is my elected official. He comes from wealth and privilege. Now, when you have, a personal worth of $100 million, the coronavirus isn't going to impact you. It's not going to impact your family. You're going to be okay. And the gentleman that represents me, he has a few small businesses still in operation. But here's the thing: it doesn't matter if those small businesses are shut down right now, because like I said, he's got more money than he knows what to do with. So I think that's the difference between having a representative who can genuinely put themselves into the shoes of people who are hurting right now versus somebody who comes from money, who has never had to think about money, who has never had to think about, what their life looks like without a paycheck. Somebody who has never had to think about, hey, where's my next meal going to come from? Will I be able to pay rent next month? So what would I have been doing for the last 3 months? What would I be doing now? I'd be looking out for the people who need help. And right now it's pretty much everybody. Everybody other than, the people who come from money, or people who still have jobs that they can work from home. But here's the thing: even those people, they're impacted by this too because like their kids and their grandkids are out of work. Like they're not going to have any sort of job prospects for the year 2020, probably not 2021. So what would I have been doing for the last 3 months? What would I be doing now as your representative? Fucking working for you. Like that's my job. You know, I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, a progressive or a moderate. Um, you know, we're all in this together, and I'd be working my fucking ass off for you. That's what I got.